The morning sunlight filtered through the grand windows of the house, painting golden streaks across the polished floors. Today was supposed to be a day of joy, a day when the laughter of family would drown out all worries, and hearts would be light. My son was getting married, and the entire house buzzed with the excitement of a wedding, the delicate scent of roses, the clatter of silver, ware being polished, the nervous laughter of relatives, preparing for photographs. I stood in the hallway, smoothing the silk of my dress, reminding myself that today I was to be nothing but a proud mother. My son, the boy I had raised with sleepless nights and relentless care, was about to start a new chapter of his life. I should have been glowing with happiness, but there was a knot in my stomach, a subtle warning that this day, which should have been full of joy, was about to turn into a nightmare. It started innocuously enough. My daughter-in-law, bright-eyed and seemingly charming, approached me with a forced smile that did not reach her eyes. She clasped my hands in hers, yet the warmth I expected was absent. I noticed the sharpness in her tone before the words even left her lips. "I think it's time," she said, leaning in as if to share a secret, "that you hand over the house." I froze. My heart skipped a beat. "The house," I repeated, trying to keep my voice steady. "Yes," she said, her smile twisting into something calculating. "A young family needs this house more than someone like you. Don't you agree? It would make everything so much easier for us." For a moment, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was standing here at my son's wedding with a demand that was nothing short of outrageous. My blood ran cold, and yet my voice found its strength. "No," I said firmly, stepping back. "This house has been in our family for decades. It holds memories, laughter, and the sacrifices of generations. It is not yours to claim." Her eyes narrowed, and the false politeness fell away. The guests continued to mill about, unaware of the storm brewing just a few steps from the celebration. And then it happened, the slap sharp, unprovoked, and filled with contempt. My cheek burned, and the sting of humiliation spread through me. Gasps erupted around us. I felt the weight of every eye in the room, some shocked, some judgmental, but all witnessing my disgrace. I could hardly process what had just occurred. My son's face paled, his hands trembling as he tried to intervene, but I held up a hand. "No, not yet." I needed a moment to collect myself, to let the anger rise, not just at the physical blow, but at the audacity, the disrespect, the greed that had masked itself behind polite words. Tears pricked the corners of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. My mind, once clouded with disbelief, now sharpened with clarity. She would not get away with this, not in my house, not to my family. I reached for my phone, fingers trembling not with fear, but with a controlled, simmering fury. I dialed a number I had kept for emergencies, a number that could turn the tables in a matter of minutes. The daughter-in-law, still smirking as if she had one, would soon learn that appearances could be deceiving. As the dial tone hummed in my ear, I felt a surge of power I hadn't known in years. She thought she could walk over me, dismiss my years, my sacrifices, and the very home that had raised my family. She had underestimated me. She had made a mistake. And mistakes, I thought, were a luxury she would no longer have. The wedding carried on around us, laughter and music attempting to mask the tension, but I no longer belonged to the soft world of celebration. My eyes met hers, and I saw it. Just the faintest flicker of uncertainty, a crack in the armor of her confidence. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there. I put the phone down, feeling the first rush of satisfaction. Revenge, I realized, is not about immediate gratification. It is about timing, precision, and making the offender see their own reflection in the ruin they sought to create. And hers would come, the music played on, the guests danced, but in the quiet corners of that grand house, a storm was brewing, a storm that she would never see coming. After the slap, the wedding continued as if nothing had happened. But for me, the world had shifted. I retreated to the quiet of the study, the polished oak walls of the room reflecting the storm in my mind. Outside, the guests laughed and clinked glasses. Inside I sat, my hands wrapped around a cup of untouched tea, my mind racing with thoughts that were as cold and sharp as the winter wind outside. I replayed the moment over and over. The audacity, the cruelty, the utter disrespect. Her words echoed like a poison, asterisk. A young family needs this house more, asterisk. What arrogance. What utter disregard for the years I had poured into this home, this family, my life. It wasn't just a house, it was every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every Christmas decorated with love, every birthday celebrated with care. And she had the nerve to demand it as if it were her due. I could feel the anger bubbling beneath my calm exterior, but I refused to let it spill over in front of my son, my family, or the other guests. No, this was not a time for reckless action. This was a time for patience, for planning, for precision. I thought of all the subtle hints of her character I had ignored, the tiny manipulations she had woven into our lives. The way she belittled my choices when no one else was around, the way she tried to make my son question my authority, the little lies she told to make herself appear virtuous while painting me as unreasonable. She had been planting seeds of discord for years, and now she thought she had won. But I was not a woman to be underestimated. I reached for my phone and dialed the number I had memorized long ago, one that I had promised myself I would never need. It was not a call made lightly, but now I had no choice. My fingers trembled not from fear, but from anticipation. The person on the other end picked up instantly, the voice calm, precise, and familiar. "It's time," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "You know what to do." The line clicked silently, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I could almost feel the world holding its breath, waiting for what was to come. 20 minutes, that was all it would take. 20 minutes, and she would see that arrogance and cruelty have consequences. I rose from my chair and walked to the window, looking out at the garden where the wedding guests continued their celebrations, oblivious to the tension that hung over the house like a dark cloud. I imagined the moment of reckoning, the subtle fear that would creep across her face, the uncertainty, the realization that she had miscalculated. My chest swelled with a strange combination of pride and satisfaction, and yet I could not allow myself to be satisfied just yet. Revenge, I reminded myself, must be measured. It must be inevitable. It must leave no doubt that justice had been done. I took a deep breath and smoothed my dress, stepping back into the world of laughter and music. To anyone looking, I was composed, serene even. But beneath that calm surface, a fire burned. The calm before the storm, I thought, is often the most dangerous moment of all. And she would feel it. As I rejoined the guests, I noticed her from across the room, laughing too loudly, trying to mask the tension she had no idea was already creeping into her carefully constructed world. Her eyes met mine briefly, and I allowed a small, imperceptible smile to curl at the corners of my lips. That smile, though tiny, carried the weight of inevitability. She would soon learn that some mistakes are unforgivable and some wrongs demand correction. I moved through the crowd, nodding politely, accepting congratulations, and giving the illusion of grace. Inside, I counted down the minutes, 10, 9, 8. Every second that passed was a step closer to the moment when the world would tilt in my favor, when the balance would finally be restored. And when it did, she would understand that power is not always loud. Sometimes it is silent, patient, and devastatingly precise. The storm was coming. The music continued to play in the grand hall, the sound of laughter and celebration filling the air. Yet beneath it all, a subtle tension began to ripple, one that only I could feel. My heart thrummed with anticipation, steady and controlled, as if each beat was counting down the moments until justice would take its first breath. I had barely returned to my seat when I noticed the first shadow on the driveway. Two figures, tall and deliberate, emerged from the morning haze. Dressed in sharp, dark suits, their presence was commanding. They moved with quiet precision, scanning the house, taking in every detail. To anyone else, they might have seemed like ordinary guests, or perhaps security personnel, but I knew. The daughter-in-law had not noticed them yet. She was still immersed in the performance of gaiety, laughing with relatives and accepting compliments, oblivious to the storm about to descend. Her smile faltered slightly as she sensed something, a subtle shift in the atmosphere that made her laugh sound forced, hollow. Who are they?" she whispered to herself, her voice tight. I caught the quiver before she even realized it herself. I remained composed, pretending to adjust a napkin at the table, my eyes never leaving her. My pulse was steady, my breathing calm, but inside, a triumphant thrill surged. This was the moment where all her arrogance, all her manipulations, would begin to crumble. The men approached the house with quiet authority. They did not speak, but their gaze was enough to unsettle anyone who dared meet it. The daughter-in-law finally noticed them at the edge of the lawn, her laughter catching in her throat. She stepped back instinctively, as if sensing that these were not ordinary guests, not part of the wedding's orchestrated chaos. She looked at me, confusion and fear mixing in her eyes. "Mother, what's going on?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the music. I allowed a slow, deliberate smile to cross my face. "I think you already know," I said softly, the calm in my voice masking the fire within. Panic began to spread across her face. The confidence she had worn like armor now cracked, revealing vulnerability she had never known before. She tried to regain composure, straightening her posture and forcing a laugh, but it sounded brittle, unnatural. The men stopped near the steps, their presence imposing yet controlled. I could see her glancing back at them, her eyes wide, her hands trembling slightly. She realized that these were not mere strangers. They were the consequence of her own actions, summoned by the woman she had underestimated. "Please, this isn't necessary," she stammered, her voice shaking. I didn't mean," but I didn't let her finish. I leaned slightly forward, my gaze locking onto hers, my voice calm yet cutting. "You made your choice, you slapped me, you demanded what was never yours, and now you will face the consequences." Her tears started to form, slow at first, then spilling freely. She tried to step away, but the men subtly blocked her path, not with violence, but with undeniable authority. The kind of authority that makes a person realize their control has evaporated. She looked around desperately, seeking allies, but everyone was watching in silence. Shock and curiosity spread across the wedding guests' faces as they sensed that something serious, something deliberate, was unfolding. No one moved to interfere. You can't do this," she cried, her voice cracking. "It's a wedding. People are watching." I let a quiet laugh escape me, soft but full of steel. "I don't care who is watching. I care about what is right." The men gestured subtly, and I could see her knees weaken. She sank slightly, overwhelmed by the reality of her reckoning. All her plans, her schemes, her attempts to manipulate my son and our family, they were unraveling in this single moment. And as she broke down completely, her cries echoing through the hall, I felt a satisfaction that was profound, almost sacred. This was not cruelty. This was justice. She had chosen arrogance. She had chosen disrespect. And now she was learning the price. I rose slowly, the eyes of the family finally finding me. Their whispers rippled through the room, some shocked, some awe-filled. They had seen her true nature, and they had seen me, calm and unshakable, orchestrating the moment that revealed the truth. For the first time in the long hours of tension and betrayal, I felt a sense of power, not born of malice, but of righteousness. She had underestimated me. She had thought I would bend, that I would falter, but I had stood firm. And now she would learn what it means to disrespect someone who has lived a lifetime of wisdom, strength, and patience. Her sobs filled the air, a sound that no celebratory music could drown out. And as I watched her realize the depth of her mistake, I knew with certainty that the storm had arrived, and justice had been served. The daughter-in-law's sobs echoed through the grand hall, bouncing off the walls lined with flowers and gilded mirrors. Her composure, once polished and perfect, had shattered completely. Her carefully constructed facade of innocence and charm lay in ruins at my feet. She had demanded, struck, and humiliated, and now, for the first time, she understood the consequences of underestimating someone who had spent a lifetime building patience, strength, and wisdom. I walked slowly toward her, my heels clicking against the marble floor. The room fell into a tense silence. Conversations halted mid-sentence, forks hovered in the air, and even the musicians seemed to play softer, as if they sensed the gravity of the moment. I could see my son standing frozen, torn between loyalty to his bride and awe at his mother's unwavering presence. She looked up at me, her eyes red, rimmed and brimming with tears, pleading with a desperation that was almost pitiable. "Please, I'm sorry, I didn't mean—" I raised a hand, cutting her off gently but firmly. "Sorry won't undo what you've done," I said, my voice calm yet laden with authority. "You chose arrogance. You chose to disrespect the family, to disrespect me. And now you are learning that some boundaries are not crossed without consequence." The two men I had called lingered silently, a steady reminder of the consequences she had ignored. Their presence alone was enough to keep her trembling, yet they did not strike, did not scold, they simply stood as a symbol of justice, executed with precision. The guests, initially shocked, began to murmur among themselves. Some had suspected the daughter-in-law's manipulations but had lacked proof. Now the truth was undeniable. They saw her cry, saw her fear, saw her helplessness, and they saw me. Calm, poised, untouchable. The mother who had weathered betrayal, who had been slapped in her own home, had risen stronger than ever. My son finally found his voice, his face pale but resolute. "Mother, I didn't know," he stammered, his gaze flicking nervously between his wife and me. I should have seen it." I nodded to him gently, placing a reassuring hand on his arm. "You have now. That is all that matters." The daughter-in-law's sobs grew quieter, her energy spent. She slumped into a chair, unable to maintain the pretense any longer. Her pleas had lost all their power because power, I realized, had shifted irrevocably. She had sought control through manipulation and aggression. I had demonstrated control through calm intelligence, patience, and strategy. "You will learn humility," I said softly, almost kindly, "because this family, this home, and the respect we hold cannot be demanded. They are earned." Tears streamed down her face as she nodded, broken. For the first time, she was confronted with the reality that her actions had consequences beyond what she could imagine. It was a lesson she could never unlearn. The wedding continued, but the atmosphere had changed. The family rallied around me, expressing quiet admiration for my courage and composure. My son approached, embracing me with gratitude and a newfound respect that glimmered in his eyes. You are incredible," he whispered, almost overwhelmed. "I will never forget this." I smiled gently, feeling a warmth spread through me. This was more than vindication. It was catharsis. The anger, humiliation, and fear I had carried had been transformed into something powerful: clarity, justice, and restored dignity. The daughter-in-law, subdued and trembling, now understood that she could no longer control the narrative. She would have to earn her place, if she could. And I would ensure that she never again underestimated the strength of a woman who had built her life, her family, and her home on years of love, patience, and resilience. As the evening drew on, I watched the celebration continue with a new sense of peace. I had faced betrayal with courage, responded to aggression with precision, and emerged not only unbroken, but empowered. The storm had passed, leaving clarity in its wake. And in that clarity, I realized something profound. True strength is not shown through anger alone. It is revealed in restraint, in strategy, in the quiet moments where patience turns into justice, and fear becomes the teacher of those who dare to challenge you. I looked at my son, then at my family, and finally at the subdued figure of the daughter-in-law. I felt a sense of resolution that was both sweet and unshakable. The house remained ours, the family intact, and the lesson clear. Respect is earned, arrogance is punished, and patience is a weapon sharper than any blade. The wedding ended not with chaos, but with a renewed sense of order. I had protected my home, my family, and my dignity, and for that I allowed myself a quiet, triumphant smile. The storm had ended, justice had been served, and I at last could breathe.